"Let us clarify the facts of the case," declared Hiratha of Clan Auroros, her voice ringing through the judicial chamber with a confidence that matched her reputation. Newly elected as the Republic's chief prosecutor, she stood at the center of the amphitheater, a figure of grace and authority. Her finely groomed, silver-tipped fur glistened under the chamber's crystalline lights, and her multicolored sash, a symbol of her office, draped elegantly across her shoulders. Hiratha extended one of her 6 upper tentacles, each tipped with small, dexterous graspers. She pointed sharply toward the defendant's dock. The gesture, though subtle by Auraxan standards, conveyed a sharp, unmistakable accusation. Sitting hunched within the confining cage was Maxwell Luis Martinez Orwell. At nearly 2 meters tall, his broad human frame dwarfed the cage, clearly not designed with his species in mind. Max shifted uncomfortably, brushing his hands along the metal bars as if testing their solidity. He was out of place in every sense, surrounded by the soft, furred forms of the Auraxans, the chamber's biting chill, and the surreal, Kafkaesque absurdity of being on trial without even knowing the charges. Hiratha turned toward the panel of judges, each robed in the ceremonial garb of their station, seated in a semicircle above the proceedings. "Maxwell Luis Martinez Orwell, also known as Maxwell of Clan Martinez, did the Department of Genetics provide you with a suitable match?" Max blinked. For a moment, he wondered if this was some kind of bizarre misunderstanding, or an elaborate prank by one of his Auraxan friends. What? He stammered, leaning forward. Hiratha's tentacles stiffened, pointing straight downward in a display of annoyance. "Answer the question," she repeated, her tone sharper now. Max stared at her, his confusion turning to frustration. "I don't even know what you're asking." Hiratha turned, retrieving a sheet of processed cellulose from the table behind her. Holding it aloft for all to see, she declared, "Did you, or did you not, receive this notice of genetic suitability from the Department of Genetics?" Max squinted at the paper, recognizing the government insignia at the top. "Yes, but a simple yes or no will suffice." Hiratha cut him off, snapping the paper back onto the desk. Max clenched his fists, forcing himself to remain calm. "But Silence!" Hiratha snapped her tentacles in a sharp whip-like crack, echoing through the chamber. "Your repeated interruptions demonstrate your flagrant disrespect for this court and its customs." Max exhaled heavily, his breath fogging in the chamber's icy air. "This is ridiculous." Hiratha ignored his remark, her attention fixed on the panel of judges. She gestured at them with a respectful flourish of her tentacles. "Honorable judges, I ask for your patience as I continue this questioning." Turning back to Max, she resumed her interrogation. "Maxwell Luis Martinez Orwell, when did you officially become a citizen of the Slimark Republic of Planets?" Max leaned back against the cage bars, his annoyance mounting. "Day 382 of period 854, he replied flatly. "That was my 17th birthday in Earth years. I'm 34 now." Hiratha's tentacles moved in a slow, deliberate arc, a gesture indicating deep thought. "You have been a citizen for more than 9 periods. Would you agree that this is a sufficient amount of time to acclimate to our culture, its laws, and its customs?" Max groaned inwardly. "I grew up here," he said, gesturing around the chamber. "I was born here on this planet. My parents were ambassadors. I've lived here my whole life." "Answer the question," Hiratha demanded, her tentacles now taut with tension. "Is 9 periods long enough to acclimate?" Max gritted his teeth. "Yes, fine. 9 periods is plenty of time." Hiratha nodded curtly. "Good. And when precisely did you learn about Auraxan reproductive cycles and customs?" Max shrugged. "I don't know. I was a kid. I guess I was always curious about biology, humans, animals, Auraxans, all of it. I probably knew the basics by the time I was 8 or 9. "So you were familiar with these customs before you became a citizen?" Hiratha pressed. "Yes," Max admitted, growing more uneasy. Hiratha straightened, turning back to the judges with a triumphant flourish. "Honorable judges, we now have confirmation that the accused was fully aware of the cultural and biological norms of the Slimark Republic well before attaining citizenship. He cannot claim ignorance." Max ran a hand through his hair, his patience wearing thin. Where are you going with this? Hiratha snapped her tentacles again, silencing him. I ask the questions here. Max bit back a retort, folding his hands in his lap like a scolded schoolboy. Hiratha leaned forward, her voice dropping into an ominous tone. Now, Maxwell Luis Martinez Orwell, tell this court what occurs during the 13 days beginning on day 211 of the period. Max frowned, the gears in his mind turning. He recognized the date. It marked the start of the Oraxan breeding cycle, a time steeped in ritual and strict societal expectations. He hesitated, unsure how to answer. Well, Hiratha prompted, her tentacles curling in anticipation. Max sighed. That's when your, breeding season begins. Hiratha tilted her head, her large, luminous eyes narrowing. And what are the obligations of a genetically compatible individual during this period? Max stiffened, realizing where this was headed. I don't see how that's relevant. Answer the question, Hiratha snapped, her voice ringing with authority. Max exhaled sharply. A genetically compatible individual is expected to participate in the mating process for the purpose of preserving genetic diversity and strengthening the population. Hiratha spread her tentacles in a dramatic gesture, addressing the judges once more. You see, honorable judges, the accused was fully aware of his obligations. And yet, when provided with a suitable match, certified by the Department of Genetics, he refused to fulfill his duty, violating the fundamental laws of our republic. Max's eyes widened in disbelief. Wait, you're saying I'm on trial for not having sex? Hiratha's tentacles quivered with indignation. You are on trial for dereliction of civic duty. Your refusal to participate undermines the very foundation of our society. Max slumped back in the cage, his head in his hands. This has to be a joke. But the grave expressions of the judges and the fiery determination in Hiratha's eyes told him otherwise. Life Festival, Max said flatly, leaning back against the cage. Hiratha gave a deliberate nod, her tentacles curling in satisfaction. And what does the Festival of Life celebrate? When Oraxans enter their fertile cycle, Max replied, his tone bordering on boredom. This is youngling school stuff. Exactly. Hiratha paused, letting the word hang in the air like an accusation before continuing. And do you know the purpose of the Department of Genetics? Max shrugged, his expression incredulous. I guess they find suitable matches for reproduction, right? I mean, it's common knowledge. Oraxans don't exactly do the whole marry for love and make babies thing. Your understanding is sufficient, Hiratha said, though her tone suggested anything but approval. She extended a tentacle, its graspers spread toward him in a pointed gesture. However, the department's work goes much deeper. Do you know why they prioritize certain matches? Why they focus on genetic dissimilarity and distance? Max tilted his head, recalling a lecture from his school days. Sure. During the First Republic, before interplanetary travel was widespread, fertility cycles weren't managed. That led to a lot of inbreeding, genetic illnesses, and other problems. Hiratha's tentacles flared, emphasizing her point. Precisely. The Department of Genetics was established to prevent such tragedies from ever recurring. By ensuring only the most genetically diverse matches during the Festival of Life, they protect the health and future of our society. She turned to face the judges, her tone rising with conviction. Maxwell Luis Martinez Orwell has admitted under oath to knowing the significance of Oraxan reproductive customs, the Festival of Life, and the essential role of the Department of Genetics, and yet, despite this knowledge, he willfully failed to comply with his assigned duty during the most recent Festival of Life. Hiratha snapped her tentacles for dramatic effect. Honorable judges, I hereby request that the court find him culpable and award punitive damages in the amount of 190,000 regals for dereliction of civic responsibility. With that, she retreated behind her table and sat with a flourish, her tentacles neatly coiled. The lead judge adjusted his sash and leaned forward. The accused may now speak on their own behalf. Max let out a long sigh, rubbing his temples before raising his head. All right, first off, let's address the obvious. I am not a suitable genetic match for anyone on this planet. He gestured toward his frame. I'm human, not Oraxan. And in case you didn't know, the other humans here are all related to me, my parents and cousins in the embassy, so not exactly a vast pool of options. He pointed at the prosecutor's table where the decree still lay in full view. Yeah, I got that notice. And you know what I thought? Wow, someone in the Department of Genetics must have really screwed up. This republic loves its paperwork and bureaucracy, so I figured the mistake would sort itself out. No big deal, right? Max leaned forward, his voice rising slightly. But instead of correcting the error, I get dragged into this absurd trial, and I still don't even know what law I've supposedly broken. I have no representation, wasn't offered any, and haven't been told my rights. So before we go any further, can we pause this circus long enough for me to hire an attorney? The chamber fell silent. The judges exchanged glances, their tentacles waving in subtle, unreadable gestures. Finally, one of the judges, a gray-furred elder, spoke up. This is not a criminal court, Maxwell Luis Martinez Orwell. This is a civil matter. There is no prosecutor here, only the aggrieved party and you, the accused. Max blinked, stunned into silence for a moment before letting out a bitter laugh. Wait, are you telling me this is a civil case? He gestured around the courtroom. I was bundled into a van, tossed into a cell, and shoved into this ridiculous cage for a civil case? The lead judge swayed his tentacles in an apologetic manner. This is standard procedure in cases where there is a possibility of harm between the aggrieved and the accused. Max threw his hands up in exasperation. Harm? Harm from what? Are you worried I'm going to bite her or something? This is ridiculous. The elder judge raised a placating tentacle. Please, calm yourself, Maxwell. Seeing as there is no physical violence involved in this case, you may leave the protective chamber, provided both parties promise not to harm each other. Max stared at the judge, his expression a mixture of disbelief and frustration. You're serious? I've been locked in this thing for hours, and now it's optional? The judge nodded solemnly. Standard procedure. Max stood slowly, ducking to avoid hitting his head as he stepped out of the cage. Standard procedure, he muttered under his breath. I swear, you people have an unhealthy relationship with bureaucracy. Hiratha bristled, her tentacles twitching, but said nothing. Max turned to the panel of judges, planting his hands on the table in front of him. Look, I don't know what kind of twisted logic brought us here, but this entire case is built on a mistake. The Department of Genetics matched a human, me, for Oraxan reproduction. That's on them, not me. If anyone should be on trial, it's the idiot who sent me that notice. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence as the judges conferred among themselves. Hiratha sat stiffly behind her table, her tentacles betraying the slightest hint of agitation. Finally, the lead judge spoke. We will deliberate on this matter. Both parties are dismissed until the next session. Max exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Fantastic. Can't wait to see how this mess gets even worse. Of course, Your Honors, Max said with a small nod of gratitude. Hiratha gestured her agreement, and the mechanism securing the cage unlocked with a soft click. As the door swung open, Max stepped out, stretching his cramped muscles with a groan. He looked up at the panel of judges. May I speak directly to the the aggrieved? The lead judge swayed his tentacles in assent. You may address and question the aggrieved directly. This is your time to do so. Max turned toward Hiratha, his expression softening. Hiratha of Clan Ouroros, can we be honest here? This isn't about me, is it? You'd never seen me before today. It's not even about the fact that I didn't show up to meet you. This case is about something deeper. You're upset because the Department of Genetics failed you. They assigned you a match who should never have been in consideration. Me, a human. That mistake cost you something important, and I don't blame you for being angry about it. He took a deep breath, his shoulders dropping slightly. I want to say that I'm genuinely sorry you missed out on a chance to reproduce this cycle. From what I've seen, you're a dedicated, driven Oraxan, someone who clearly takes their role in society seriously. I respect that, and I believe there's a better match for you out there, someone who's truly compatible. I hope, with all sincerity, that the next cycle brings you exactly what you're looking for. Hiratha's tentacles curled inward, her posture shrinking slightly. When you didn't show up at the appointed time, she began, her voice quieter than before, I assumed the worst. I thought my match had seen me, decided I wasn't appealing, and run away. I know I'm not considered the most attractive by my people. She paused, her tentacles quivering before continuing. But when I started looking into it, I found out the truth, that I'd been matched with the only human citizen within 30 light years. Max stepped a little closer, keeping his voice calm and steady. And that truth stung. I get it, Hiratha. You wanted to hold someone accountable for that pain, and as a prosecutor, this is what you do. You find someone to face justice. We humans have a saying, when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. You are just using the tool you know best to deal with this. Hiratha stiffened at first, but her tentacles slowly relaxed as Max spoke. That said, Max continued, his voice tinged with regret, I can see now that I've unintentionally caused you pain. That was never my intention, and for that, I owe you an apology. I didn't take the notice seriously because, well, it seemed absurd on its face. Human genetics don't work with Auraxans. I thought the bureaucracy would sort it out, not realizing how much it would impact someone like you. He paused, letting his words settle, then straightened up. Hiratha, I ask for your forgiveness. I don't know how money could possibly fix what happened. 190,000 regals is more than I make in a full period, but I want to make amends. If it's acceptable to you, I'd like to offer a more personal apology. Max smiled faintly, a mix of humility and hope. I'd like to invite you to dinner at my home. Any dish, human or Auraxan, that you'd like. I'll prepare it myself. I've spent years learning to cook in the embassy kitchen, and it would be my honor to create a meal that reflects my regret and respect for you. The judges leaned toward one another, conferring quietly, their tentacles swaying and curling in intricate patterns. After a moment, the lead judge spoke. We have heard the counteroffer of a meal as a gesture of reconciliation. Given that the harm inflicted was neither physical nor intentional, and taking into account the cultural differences at play, we are reluctant to impose punitive damages. Hiratha of Clan Ouroros, do you accept this counteroffer? Hiratha hesitated, her tentacles twitching with indecision. Finally, she stepped forward, standing tall despite her uncertainty. I will accept on one condition. Max raised an eyebrow. Name it. You agree to testify on my behalf when I bring charges against the Department of Genetics for malpractice and dereliction of duty. Hiratha's voice grew firm, her tentacles straightening. They failed us both, Max. Someone has to hold them accountable for their negligence. Max nodded without hesitation. You've got it, Hiratha. I'll help you hammer that particular nail into place. For the first time, Hiratha's tentacles unfurled in a motion that might have been a gesture of gratitude. Then, we have an agreement. The lead judge clapped his tentacles together, signaling the conclusion of the session. This court finds the matter resolved to the satisfaction of both parties. The case is dismissed. Max let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding and turned to Hiratha. So, what's your favorite dish? I'd better start practicing. Hiratha hesitated, then let out a quiet chuff of laughter. Surprise me, human. If you enjoy captivating stories like this one, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes on HM's Sci-Fi stories.